All right, guys, let's take a trip to Africa. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, the host, coming at you from the Broken Tine studio right here in Clark Fork, Idaho. How you guys doing? Week of Valentine's, so hope that panned out well for you guys. So I've got a really good episode lined up for you today, and I'm really excited about this guest, and I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this. Before we get there, I do want to send out like a quick shout out to my buddy Andy down in Boise, Idaho, who owns Get Your Meat LLC. And Get Your Meat is a local butcher shop that Andy started a couple years back, and it's been growing like crazy. And he sent me some samples to try out. I think he sent them in the hopes that I'd maybe talk about it on the show, and he was right. So, great job, Andy. Andy does a great job. Obviously, if you pay attention to what the name of his company is, Get Your Meat, you're not going to take your elk or your bear or whatever and get somebody else's meat back. You're going to get he does one animal at a time, and the way he processes these animals, he's got a lot of talent. He's a skilled butcher, and it's a great product, and it's yours. So great concept, great company. I really like these stories of companies starting in somebody's garage and like growing into something bigger. You guys know, if you listen to the show, that's what I really love seeing. So Andy, I appreciate it. Thanks again for the meat package. We loved it. We're still working on getting through all of it. So thanks again for setting that up. And guys, if you're in the Boise area and need a butcher, check out Andy at Get Your Meat LLC. You can find him on Facebook and Instagram, and he didn't pay me anything but the meat to say that. So, the other announcement I want to make in terms of time of year, guys, it's February, and as we are gearing up for spring bear hunts, I want just to let you guys know, if you have been paying attention in the show notes, last year I had my friend in Alaska, Jess Gann, she owns a company called Batum 907, and she is one of the world's foremost bear hunters out of Alaska, an amazing human that does an amazing job with her products. So if you guys need, if you're in states that allow it, products for baiting bears, jump on Batum907.com and get you an order. And she gave us a discount to use, which is I said it wrong, Huntsman 10, get you 10% off your Batum 907 order. The only reason I bring that up now is because we need to gear up, and it's coming, so don't wait too long to get that bait and those scent products. I love the scent ball. I hang the scent ball in the tree above my bait barrel, and it's amazing. So check it out. This week, folks, ladies and gentlemen, I have got somebody that I've really wanted to get on the show. I was introduced, I don't know, six or 8 weeks ago to Sue Tidwell, and she is an author of a book called Cries of the Savanna. An adventure, an awakening, a journey to understanding African wildlife conservation. What really makes this the perception of, or I guess the standpoint that she writes this from, super interesting to me. Not only is Sue a fellow Idahoan, a North Idahoan at that. I don't know, is Grangeville North Idaho, Sue? Do you consider that North Idaho?
Yeah, we consider that North Idaho, yes.
I feel like that's right on the southernmost part of North Idaho, so I think it counts.
Yeah, we're right kind of in that panhandle, right when the narrow starts up, you know. But
Yep. It's a great town. I actually really love Grangeville. Is that little shop, the outdoor shop, still there? They've got like the camo.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the name of that shop? I want to give her a shout out. I know the owner.
Oh, Oh gosh, you're gonna.
Put
I
you
actually
on
live
the
in
spot.
Cottonwood, so I live 15 miles away, and I'm going to go totally blank. My husband would tell you in a heartbeat, but
Yeah, I can't remember
oh
the name
gosh,
of
I'm
it.
so sorry, and I feel bad. I can't give him a shout out. I'm going blank
No, that's okay.
here.
I'll look it up on the internet here in just a minute. But Grangeville, and this isn't where Sue is originally from, but Sue has spent a lifetime kind of being around hunters and growing up in Pennsylvania with a family that hunted and had some reservations about it. And after years, went with her husband Rick to Africa on a hunt. And I'm not going to spill all the beans. I'm going to let Sue explain this much better than I can articulate it. But she widens her understanding of conservation, whether it is here in the States or somewhere like Africa, and the differences and the nuances between the two different places are important to compare. And the book is amazing, and I'm going to be giving away one of these books for somebody in the audience here. Which, by the way, you can find the book on Amazon, and I'll put that in the show notes and all that. But we're gonna do a book giveaway, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little while. So, Sue, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me. And how you doing?
Well, hi, Jim. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being on here, and I'm happy anytime I can talk about Africa. So I appreciate you having me on.
Well, before we get to Africa, can you give us a synopsis of how you grew up in Pennsylvania and how you ended up in Idaho?
Sure. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. So I grew up, I have 4 brothers and a dad. Everyone hunted. So I grew up in a hunting family. So it really wasn't so much that I was against hunting. I understood it. We ate meat most of my life. I mean, deer meat, and, my favorite meal is deer burger or spaghetti sauce. So, so I understood hunting in America. I understood deer hunting and elk hunting, and not necessarily elk when I was growing up because that was so far from us, but I understand deer and turkey hunting. And so, it wasn't, I knew hunters not to be these evil people like they're sometimes portrayed. They're good, hardworking people. They care about the animals. They care about conservation. So I knew all that stuff. So of course I ended up moving to Alaska, through twists and turns of life. I worked in a steel mill in Pennsylvania for 10 years. And then I ended up in Alaska. I needed a change from Pennsylvania. So I ended up in Anchorage, Alaska, and went to being a flight attendant of all things from a steel mill worker, and met my husband up there. And he's originally from Idaho. So after a few years, when we got, his daughter wanted to come live with us, we moved back down to Idaho, in rural Idaho. So that's how I ended up in Idaho.
And your husband, Rick, he's grew up on a ranch kind of in that Grangeville area, Cottonwood area?
Yeah, it's a small, modest ranch by Idaho standards. They have about 60 head of cattle, and I think they have 20, 30 horses. But yeah, he grew up right on the breaks above the Salmon River. So right on the edge of the prairie overlooking the salmon, basically.
Oh, that's such a beautiful area. I love that. So
it is beautiful there.
Not a terrible place to be. And I'll bet the winters are a little better than they were in Alaska, huh?
Oh, definitely. And it depends what elevation you're at too. It's just kind of crazy. That difference in elevations. Being from Pennsylvania, it's kind of the same everywhere.
Yeah.
In Idaho, you can drive 10 minutes and you can be out of snow. You can drive. It's just crazy, the different changes.
Yeah. Lots of disparity in the landscape for sure in Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, I was fascinated with some of the stories you told in the book about Rick being a bush pilot in Alaska. That's always something. Like I've wanted to do that, and my wife wouldn't allow me because she thinks it's too dangerous. So I can't fly. She won't let me.
It's definitely dangerous. He's got some hair-raising stories. I could write a book just about that.
I'll bet.
That flying up in that Alaska territory, that's, landing on runways with only headlights of a four-wheeler to guide you down, and it's just kind of crazy. But
nuts. But when you guys end up moving back to Alaska, back to Idaho. Had you visited Idaho prior to that?
Yeah, I did. We went there several times, to introduce me to his family and everything. And I, of course, fell in love with it. We had already been in Anchorage for 3 years at that point. So I was ready for another change. I loved Alaska and the hiking. And it was just such a lifetime experience. But then I also fell in love with Idaho once he introduced me to Idaho and the horses and the ranch life. And so, I'm always ready for a new adventure. So I was excited when it came to that. I mean, I had to give up being a flight attendant because when, somebody had to be home with Mandy all the time when she came to live with us. But Rick continued the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off for a while, flying in the bush,
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
we did that for a few years. And then we started our own business. He started flying the smoke jumper ship. So he flew the Twin Otter so that the smoke jumpers could jump out into the fires. And then from there we ended up buying a few small planes and took over the fire spotting business. So we had little planes that flew over when there was lightning strikes in the summer. We contracted out to the Forest Service and we searched for fires and then reported back to the Forest Service. And then they decided how they were going to fight them, whether they were going to use smoke jumpers or fire crews or, that kind of stuff.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh. Cool. That's awesome. So that takes a totally different breed of person, to be somebody who flies smoke jumpers into forest fires, and on another level, jumping out of an airplane into a fire is an interesting thing.
Well, I can tell you one thing, Rick will not jump out of a perfectly good airplane. So he's definitely not going to jump out of that airplane.
I want to kind of go backwards again here. Because now you guys are in Idaho. You're still doing the aircraft thing, right? You own the aircraft service. Is just to make sure I clarified that?
Well,
right?
we ended up we lost our director of maintenance, so we had to. And Rick was tired of dealing with the FAA and everything. So we lost our director of maintenance. It's hard to pay somebody for just that 4 months we need, and we couldn't afford to pay them for the whole year. So we ended up selling the planes and the business. And he always wanted to fly big jets, and now he's working for Alaska Airlines. So
gotcha.
he's flying big jets now and based out of Seattle. So we kind of travel between Seattle and Idaho.
Oh, nice.
Back and forth.
So kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the.
Well, I won't see anything about. No, I shouldn't say that on here. But we're not. Let's put it this way: we're not city people, so we would much prefer to be in Idaho.
Yeah.
But he has to be there some to fly.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, I don't think you'll offend anybody in this audience. I promise.
I cut myself there.
What kind of talk about where this this draw and this passion for Africa and African wildlife, where did that come from? Where did that develop?
Well, from early on, from the time I was a little girl, I was just infatuated with Africa. I have always loved African wildlife, and I've always wanted to go there. And then, of course, that's just one of those dreams you put on hold for so many years. And Rick and I, we met, and then I started, even though my family hunted, I never went with them. That wasn't, I didn't see the deer till they were hanging up in the garage, so I wasn't a part of the hunt. Now, once I met Rick and he wanted me to go with him, I started going with him on hunts, and I just started really enjoying it. I mean, I still had no desire to pull the trigger, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, but I enjoyed the hunt. I enjoyed the challenge.
I don't know if that's, I want to stop you for a minute. I don't know if that's hypocrisy. I think that, it's, and I've talked about this a few times, like my wife doesn't hunt, but if I'm being lazy during hunting season, maybe, and threatening a winter without a freezer full of meat, she's not shy about letting me know and putting, a proverbial foot up my butt to make sure I get out there, right? So she has always been that way, like you described. She values hunting and understands its necessity, but she doesn't want to be the one pulling the trigger. So I respect that, and she has, she's not shy about it. It's just not something. I don't think it needs to be explained in the fashion of hypocrisy. You know what I mean?
Okay, well that's good, because I never really know how to explain that, because
it's
I just don't feel the need to pull the trigger, but I have to say I enjoy the experience. I was always a hiker. I was always about getting from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. But when you go with a hunter, it's more about the journey. It's more about like looking at every leaf and looking at, you know what it's like. You're looking at for everything, and you don't really care how far you get. It's more about, what you're seeing along the way, so to speak. So
Yeah.
And it's testing your body. I mean, that's, hunting out in Idaho is tough work.
Right.
So, so it's a good challenge.
Yeah, that and you said it very well. Hunting, pulling the trigger is the most inconsequential part of being a hunter, if that makes sense. It's
Exactly.
it's a two-way thing. It's about the full experience, and there's so many layers of hunting, and the preparation, the experience, the waking up in the morning, the smells, the sights, the sounds, the visuals that just kind of click in your mind and last forever. The pulling the trigger part or releasing the arrow part is a small part of it, yet it is consequential, and that's, in my mind, it's always almost kind of a once that trigger is pulled, it's kind of a bummer. It's like, man, well, this is over, this hunt's over, now the work starts. And so that's, I could see being a person that wouldn't want to be the person behind the weapon, still getting full enjoyment out of what a hunt is. And going back to my wife, she loves going along with hunts, especially on a September archery hunt where the elk are just screaming at us in our face, and getting that exhilaration. I always relate it like this. Think about all the people that live in these big urban, like we were talking about Seattle. Think of the people that live in Seattle and other big urban centers where, like, they'll never experience that. They'll never experience that. Not because they're not hunters. It's because they're generally not going to be in the elk woods in September. Kids are back in school, it's cooling off. All those kind of factors kind of play into it. And they're not screaming at a bull, trying to get a bull to respond. It's just an experience that so many people on this planet will never experience, just like in your book. I don't know how to pronounce it. The tsetse fly, the
tsetse fly.
Tsetse fly. So I don't want to experience those.
No, you don't need to experience those. I did it for you.
Well, I appreciate your sacrifice, because that sounds terrible.
Oh, they're nasty little buggers.
Man, you guys had all those clothes on. They're still getting through it. It's crazy.
Oh, it's crazy.
I thought mosquitoes in North Idaho were bad, but nope.
Yeah, they're nothing compared to and they're actually a little smaller than a housefly. So they're just so deceptive looking that they're like little miniature vampires, like I call them. They're little flying miniature vampires is what they are, and they suck the blood out of you, and they don't die. If you keep hitting them, they're like a vampire. They don't die.
And
our PH always had to twist the head off. He would like grab them somehow, and he would twist the head off. That's how he would kill those little flies.
No kidding.
It's crazy.
Like they were that hardy, huh?
Oh, they are. They're just tough.
It's crazy because you talked about in the book how, like, that part of Africa never got conquered because the horses from, big European empires or whatever couldn't go into there because of these flies. And that's what kept that part of Africa from being overrun from foreign invaders. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that what the impact what a little fly can do.
I know. I had no idea, to be honest, either, until I researched, for the book. And then the more I learned, I was just like, oh my gosh. I mean,
yeah.
I knew how they felt and I knew certain things about them. But when I, of course, had to have more knowledge to write the book, really, we can thank those little buggers for large parts of Africa still being wild.
Yeah.
Or there'd be, it would have been domesticated earlier because, horses can't survive around and cattle don't do well around them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's pretty amazing, really.
And getting back to where, when you talk about when you were young, you had this fascination with the wildlife in Africa and always wanted to visit and go. Did that just come like, were you checking out a magazine and saw some animals or watching a show on TV or, talk about
do
that?
You remember, this is going to age me, but do you remember Kimba the White Lion?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Cartoon?
Yep.
Well, that was I don't know how to keep, my friend keeps trying to call it. I don't know how to, but anyway, hopefully I did that. But anyway, are you hearing that buzzing?
I'm not hearing it, so.
Okay, good.
Don't
Well, I'll just
worry
ignore
about it.
But anyway, yeah, I watched Kimba the White Lion cartoon from an early age, and then I just think I watched anything Africa related and Tarzan. Now I was I was into Tarzan, and then having four brothers and a dad, and that's when you were lucky if you had one TV in the house.
Yeah.
And so like football would be on, like I'd be watching Tarzan movies on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of the winter, and my brothers would come home and then the channel would get changed. And I never knew how those Tarzan movies ended. And it was so infuriating to me. I still hate football to this day because I think it just ruined all my Tarzan all my Tarzan movies. But anyway, I was outnumbered in our house, so I didn't have a choice.
It sounds like it. Sounds like it for sure.
But that's what's so weird is like when Rick wanted to go, I understood. That's what's so weird about me, and I'm not the only American. I mean, we understand hunting like deer and elk and turkey, but when it comes to hunting African wildlife, we have them in a whole different category. I mean, like, we're just so emotionally attached to them, to those animals, that we just see it differently somehow. And then, of course, there's that whole trophy hunting thing where as soon as you put trophy hunting in front of a word, it villainizes the hunter and makes everybody look, it's just a way to make them look evil, and there are these entitled rich people who go hunting in Africa. It's just such a negative term that the antis have really latched onto.
Yeah, that is the go-to term for the Humane Society of the United States. Is they don't ever just refer to somebody as a hunter or a bear hunter or a deer hunter or anything like that. It's all trophy hunter. And what is a trophy hunter? I've never understood that term, because even when you're talking in Africa, with the exception of which is a totally different dynamic, actually. So it's not with the exception of the poachers that go after the rhino horns, right? Those are not hunters. So when you're talking about your husband shot that Cape buffalo and how quickly it was broken down and processed, like these, just like here in the States, nobody shot that as a trophy. Nobody's disregarding the rest of the animal because they have a trophy. In the States, it's the same thing. Do I want to shoot the biggest elk I could find? Absolutely. I do want to put antlers on the wall. I do want to put, I want to show that experience. And it's not so much as in a, some braggadocious way. It's less about that and more about the reminder of the memory that I've had for that, especially as I get older. The older I get, the more this makes sense, and I think that it maybe didn't make sense when I was younger, and more, prone to falling victim to propagated messages like, these are trophy hunters. Because I remember there was a time, I've always been a hunter my whole life, but there was a time in my life where I felt like maybe, hunting a giraffe in Africa is bad. That's because that was the message. That's the only message I would get. And it's the same as when you talk about in the book, when you were in your 20s, your feeling towards wolves, and let's talk about that before we get to the book in Africa, because I think you have such a unique perspective on that, because you've lived this life so far removed from wolves and were involved and passionate about getting wolves reintroduced to faraway lands that didn't impact you in a daily life. And this is what you talk about in your book. To the other side of the spectrum, where you live amongst the wolves, where this isn't a distant thing for you anymore. And so I think you have one of the most unique, credible perspectives on this topic that I could think of. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I think that's one of these things. How do I say this? I feel like in some ways my experience has set me up to write this book, because I just feel everything in my life led me here. But the wolf thing is one of those things, because I grew up in my 20s a total wolf advocate. I mean, I was, I'm passionate pretty much about whatever it is at the time, whatever it is I love, I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
So I wrote letters to the senators. I was on these action alerts where they'd send you a thing. That's back before email and all that stuff. So, I'd have to type out letters and send them to the representatives. I donated money to wolf introduction. I did all that stuff. I wasn't thinking about how it was affecting the people in Idaho. Well, actually, it's not that I didn't care. I actually thought, well, they'll just be reimbursed. If they lose a cow or something, they'll be reimbursed. It's, it's no big deal. I mean, I don't know if I wanted to say it was no big deal because I still was always a caring person, but I just didn't think of all the aspects of it, and then come to find out 10 years later, here I am smack dab in the middle of wolf country, and I'm hunting with my elk hunting with my husband. And those first few years were just, amazing. We were always into elk, and you hear them bugling, and we had our favorite spots. And, my brothers would come from Pennsylvania, and we put up these wonderful camps and, clearing the backcountry and just have, wonderful time. And you still don't always get an elk. It's still really, really hard work. And, but the experience was just amazing. And spending that quality time in the woods was amazing. Mm-hmm. But then as the years went by, I saw the decrease. I saw the decline. And then, I remember that last time, as I talked about in the book, that we went to our favorite spot that we had been going to for years. We saw 0 elk. All we saw was wolf poop, and all it was in it was hair. It was just so weird looking because it just looks like big clumps of hair, but it's,
Yeah.
But so it gave me a whole new perspective. And we are like near 2 of the hardest hit zones. We're right close there. So, and then we went to another elk habitat, and the same thing happened there. They moved in there in the North Fork country, and it was the same type thing. I mean, I was sitting. Well, that's a little maybe too much information, but I was. If you read the book, I was doing my business over a hole in the ground precariously, in the middle of the night with a lantern on my head, and the wolves were howling in the distance, and it was just the mules were going crazy, and anyway, it was crazy. But so I saw it firsthand.
Yeah, you did, and that's. I'm trying to go back in your book here. I'm looking for a particular quote, but I haven't found it yet. But to sum it up, your emotional perception versus what the realities on the ground are. It was a great quote. I thought I dog-eared the page, but apparently it came out. About my daughter. I was gonna say, interestingly, and I told you this before we started recording, but I haven't even finished the book because my daughter stole it. My 12-year-old Shiloh, she took it when it got delivered. And didn't think of letting me know that it was there because it might be for the podcast. She just thought it was a good book and wanted to go read it, and which I encourage. She's a great reader. So, anyways,
well, I'm glad she read it.
Yeah, she loves it. So, I'm a little over halfway through it, but it gave me the gist of what you were getting at, and that the chapter regarding, your experience back. Coming to Idaho, experiencing, elk prior to this, 10-year period of no wolf management, and how that evolved into these desolate lands that produced very little elk, to now we can manage our wolves, and how that's kind of come back. Now, and I agree with what you say in the book. The last couple of years, I've really noticed a difference in terms of the elk are becoming more vocal again. I'm seeing more of them. I'm having more elk encounters. I'm seeing more sign. And there's a couple things that is happening. Because like you, I do not blame the wolf for all of Idaho's woes. In regards to elk, there's a lot of factors that play in: winter kill, other predators, all that stuff. But it is an interesting dynamic when you look at the decline in elk numbers and the advanced, or I guess the growing population of wolf numbers out there. It's all at the same time, right? That is the factor. That is the one thing that came in and was a significant change to our landscape here. That took us from, in the 1990s, being one of the prime elk states in the nation to, not somewhere that people really seek out in terms of, with the exception of just because we have over-the-counter tags. Other than that, it's not like we're, some state that people really seek out to go elk hunting anymore. And it used to be that way. However, This is a long way of just trying to make a simple point of I agree with your assessment that the elk numbers are coming back due to wolf management, and I think that that's a huge factor.
I wanted to present both sides of it. I wanted to make sure I was open and said so that let people make their own kind of deductions from it, but just experience what I learned and what I kind of give all sides of it basically.
Can I ask you something on that?
Sure.
Looking back to when you were in your 20s and you're writing these letters to, promote the reintroduction of wolves into the Yellowstone ecosystem in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and you were advocating for these wolves, and then putting yourself in your shoes where you're at now and your perspectives and your wisdom has changed, all these things that, obviously folks listening to this need to read the book to fully understand. What would you tell your 20-year-old self in regards to wolves, knowing the mindset you were in your 20s?
I would tell myself it's good to have emotions. We all have them and they're important. And I think we can't deny that. But we also have to look at facts. We have to get past our emotion and look at the big picture. I think you can't just look at one little slice of something. And also, you have to understand that everybody has a, what's that word I'm looking for? Everybody has a agenda. So when you're reading those action alerts that I was reading, they have an agenda. They want money, and they, and I'm not going to say they're all, they might have been well-intentioned, some of them, but some people aren't well-intentioned. And you have to look at both sides of things. If you really believe in something and you really want to stand behind something and put your voice to it like I did, I should have done my research. So that's what I would recommend now. There's always two sides to every story, and if you're going to support something full-heartedly, you better research so you are well versed on both sides, I think.
Do you think that saying that to your 20-year-old self would have listened?
I don't know. I hate to say that.
Well, don't hate to say it. I think that, when you come at it from a very mature perspective, like the way you just articulated it, like it makes sense. It's like, oh, okay. In my mind, I'm in my 40s. I would have been like, oh, okay. You know what? You're right. I'm gonna take the time. I'm gonna learn about different aspects of this argument and really fully educate myself so I understand the full picture, not just a one-sided, biased, I'll give you a great example. I was arguing with somebody on Facebook that was a pro-wolf advocate, but she was, every time she'd make a point, she would cite all these sources that are so lopsidedly pro-wolf that it's like, I think that's an important thing for people to understand. Citing a source that is so lopsidedly one-way biased does not prove your point. And so I don't know where I was going. I kind of lost my train of thought, but I do want to say that, like, I think that there's people that could take the information that you just told them, right? And it's your 20-year-old self, and they're so emotionally attached to the idea that that's not going to sway them. And I think it takes some experience in life to get to that point, because I was on the reverse end of that, where I hated wolves. I wanted them eliminated. I didn't want them reintroduced. Because I didn't know. Now, in where I'm at in my life, I find it important to have wolves on the landscape as long as they are tightly managed, because I think that having wolves makes our wild places a little bit more wild and more authentic as to how they used to be. But to allow them to run unmanaged is obviously problematic for every other species. So I hope that makes sense, the way I explained that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, unfortunately, some things do just come from experience, so
yeah.
As much as and that's why I try to kind of, and we continue to learn. I mean, here I learned that lesson about wolves, but then when it came for my husband wanted to hunt a zebra, I went right back to the same thought process. Do you know what I mean? So we're all guilty. I mean, because I did not want him hunting a zebra. I thought, oh my gosh, we got 20 some horses on the ranch. His family does, and it's like a wild horse. It's going to be so easy. It's not fair chase. I had all these misconceptions, and Rick kept telling me, Sue, they're wild animals, da da da. And of course, I'm not going to tell Rick what to do, and because I still was in this world, but I still just didn't get it.
Yeah.
But that's how I'm able to talk about wolves, because I kind of had to relearn again. I mean, here I was doing the same thing with zebras that I did with wolves. I mean, not to the extreme. I didn't write letters and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But
I had
to relearn.
I had no idea zebras were such savages, and I've always wondered, why don't they domesticate some zebras and they can use them to ride around in the savannah? And so I learned in your book why that isn't possible. So it's very interesting, because I would have a hard time with that too. I used to have horses, and so the thought of shooting something that looks like a horse is a bit troublesome to me. But I would do it because my more pragmatic side would definitely kick in, and I could see it. But I, like you, look at zebras as if they're. I used to have this horse named Bad Whiskey, and I
like the name.
Yeah, he would, and he had quite an attitude. He loved me and would let me ride, but anybody else, he'd kind of give him a hard time, and so that's kind of where the name came from. But anyway. He was a great horse, but the point is you grow so attached to these animals, and then you see the similar version in Africa. That the only difference is they've got stripes, and that's just from a layman's perspective. There's a lot of differences that I can't describe. You do in the book, and it makes sense after that. And so you made a great case for it. When you got to Africa, you'd spent your entire life kind of building this up and getting to Africa to experience this trip and these hunts and this camp that you stayed in with, the wildlife outside at night, keeping you guys up all night. What was the perception you had in your mind as to how Africa would be versus what the reality of it was?
Well, being that I'm a non-hunter and had dreamt about it my whole life, I wasn't picturing myself going like Kruger National Park or the Serengeti and just driving by and watching animals just stand there as I took pictures, picture after picture, and then you take a couple tours, you go home, or you go back to your hotel, you rest in a pool during the heat of the day. I mean, so I had no intention of sleeping in a tent with lions roaring outside. So it totally blew my mind, basically, but in a good way. I was scared to death. Don't get me wrong. I was like, more than anything, I was petrified of black mambas. I was just scared to death of those things.
Yeah, talk about those suckers. I don't want to go hunting where there's black mambas either.
Oh my gosh, you essentially have about 20 minutes to live. Sometimes I think you can live a little longer, but if you don't have an antidote, and people don't carry antidotes mostly in these kind of places, and the chance of having it right when you get, anyway, they're basically a death sentence. So, They're nasty snakes. Now, granted, they're aggressive if cornered, but from what I learned, those PHs and stuff, the professional hunters, they're just amazing. Their knowledge is just amazing.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I love that part of it, because they are. But I just real quick, are the black mamas, are those the ones that would, in the tall grass, stick their heads up like a periscope?
Yes, like a periscope, yes. But luckily they are a shy snake. So Raphael always told me, Sue, don't worry. They hear our vibrations. They hear us coming. They're going to get out of the way. But now in the second sense, they would say, now don't be sticking your hand in some hole or a tree. You got to be aware. You don't want to ever corner one. But anyway, yeah, they're scary stuff.
Can you talk about, I wouldn't want to hunt with them. And I'm not like one of those people that's terrified of snakes or anything. I grew up around rattlesnakes. It was just the norm. But Those things, the fact that you have like 20 minutes, maybe 30 to live if you don't have the antidote, I'm good. I'll stick to Idaho. No, I'm kidding. I do have an interest. Honestly, before reading your book, I had zero interest in going to Africa to hunt. And for me, it's because I like the I don't have a lot of interest of hunting with a guide. And now that I've read your book, the team that takes you guys out when you're going after, something like a Cape buffalo, those things are intense. Can you describe the team for folks listening that might have a misconception of what hunting in Africa is, because it's not the same thing as hunting with a guide here in the States. It is not the same reason to have them. It's not the same dynamic.
It's a lot different.
Yeah. Talk about that. I love it.
Well, and get granted, now I'm talking about Tanzania. Every country is pretty much similar, but, they each have their own little quirks. So specifically Tanzania, however, sends you with, you have to have a government game scout with you at all times. So we had a professional hunter, which we call PH. We had 2 trackers, a head tracker and a helper tracker. We had a driver who drove the Jeep or the Land Cruiser. And then we had Lillian, who was our Tanzanian game scout. We were fortunate for me to get this young female game scout who spoke pretty good English. So it was just amazing. We were able to build this great relationship. But yeah, Tanzania, it's required. You have to have this. And she's not affiliated with the hunting organizations or with the hunting concession in any way.
Yeah.
Like she met there was 21 people taking care of 4 of us, if you can believe that. And, I never thought of myself as being spoiled, but after you're in Africa, you realize we are spoiled. So, but anyway, so she never met them either. She met them the same day that I met them. And that's by design. They don't really want game scouts getting too cozy with concessions, with the hunters or with the hunting concessions. So to make sure everything's legal and everything. But yeah, so she rides in the front of the Jeep, the driver drives on the left side, and then Rick and I and the PH professional hunter up are on the bench seat on the back. And then the trackers are kind of like standing behind us in the cargo hold. And like they have eyes like hawks. And
yeah, that's
it's
what you're
just
seeing.
Unbelievable. I mean, they could see a kudu here 300 yards away behind some brush. And, he would, like the tracker would tap Raphael, and then Raphael would tap the driver, and the driver would hover him stop, or else he'd signal to go hide the vehicle to try to get it if till we could figure out if it was an animal worth pursuing or not. But yeah, the PHs are there to, first of all, make sure you live, that you don't die. And hunting animals in Africa is totally different than, you shoot different spots. I mean, Rick did all the studying in the world for shot placement, but they're different. And it's still, you can judge an elk's horns, but can you judge a sable's horns or a kudu's horns?
Nope,
I mean,
you
might, yeah. So you really need them, guys. They're just a wealth of information.
And so Lillian, getting back to Lillian, would it be fair to say that it would, in the States, as hunters here, it would be similar to going like to a hunting ranch that takes you out onto public land kind of thing, and to ensure that all laws are followed, they attach a game warden to your party. Does that?
Yeah. Yep, that's similar. Yep.
And that's what she was, and she also carried an AK-47 for what reason?
Well, for poachers mainly, because she wasn't so much worried. Because I asked Rick that, I asked them that it was required. She had to carry that thing at all times. I mean, like you never saw her set it down. I mean, except when we were at camp, she was allowed to put it down a little bit. But yeah, it was mainly for poachers, I think, because you had Rick carrying a gun and you had Raphael carrying a gun, so she probably really wouldn't need it for the animals, although that it would have, it wouldn't have hurt to have it.
I'd use it on the black mamba.
After us. Oh, well, you were talking about those black mambas when we were going after those, the Cape buffalo. And like I said, everything happened so fast. I didn't know what was happening. Next thing you know, we're just like running. We're all just running, and we always did it single file. And I was always behind the head tracker, Go-Go. And I could hardly keep up, and I'm breathing hard, and I'm running, and I'm looking for black mambas. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they don't have time to get out of my way. I mean, I was barely even looking at the Cape Buffalo. I was just looking on the ground. I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to step on a snake. I'm going to step on anything. And then before you knew it, all of a sudden there's like hundreds of Cape Buffalo in front of me. I didn't even know what we were running for, to be honest. Everything had happened so fast, but it was crazy.
Scree gear. Have you guys checked it out yet? Scree is extreme mountain gear. The high-performance hunting attire, scientifically tested, backed by a great company. It's my go-to camo, and of all the discussion we have about all this infighting amongst hunters about what kind of gear they choose, it's okay to have a favorite, as long as we're not fighting about it. And my favorite and my proven gear is Scree. Scree is spelled S-K-R-E. It's kind of a play on the word from scree rock found at the bottom of a cliff face or something like that. And they changed the name. And Scree gear is a complete layering system for all terrain and conditions. Gear designed to adapt to the weather. It's rugged gear, and it's all backed by a lifetime warranty. One of the things I really like about Scree is their VIP sizing and exchange program. Order the wrong size pants, they don't fit right, send them back. They'll send you another pair. It's all on Scree's dime. Guys, it's a great company. Check them out at screegear.com and use the promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off and free shipping. Hoffman Boots is another show favorite right here at the Western Huntsman. There's lots of good boots out there. There's a lot of bad boots out there too, but Hoffman is a proven system that I've been using for a few years. Actually, I've been using them for close to a decade now. And I love the company. I love the story of the company. It's like a family of shoemakers, and it's just a great North Idaho story. It's a great American story. They make a great boot without breaking the bank. Check it out at hoffmanboots.com and use promo code Huntsman10 for 10% off. Don't forget, Phelps Game Calls is my go-to call company. You guys know it. I've been using Phelps for a long time. They're the oldest sponsor on this show. I'd say the flagship line of calls that they have is definitely geared towards elk. And what a great job that they do. But don't forget that Phelps Game Calls also has a full line of like waterfowl calls, predator calls. There's things that you can check out on the Phelps website that might surprise you. To include something that is coming up quick for us hunters, which is spring turkey. And I don't know how many of you are into spring turkey hunting, but man, is it a ball. It's a riot. You got to check it out. I love the black bat from Phelps Game Calls. It works very well for me. It's a great little read. And try out the blacktail in distress call when you're hunting bears. I'd love to hear if somebody calls one in that way. I've tried it a few times with no luck yet, but we got a whole new season coming up, and it's coming quick, and I'm going to try it again. So check out phelpsgamecalls.com. Use promo code Huntsman10 for 10% off. If you check out the westernhuntsman.com, you are going to find anything from t-shirts to Tacticam gear, and all of that stuff. A portion of those proceeds is going to go towards conservation and fighting against the anti-hunting movement. Plus, you'll be sporting a cool t-shirt that says a Western Huntsman. And now, I'm not the greatest t-shirt designer in the world, but I do have a friend that is, and he helped me put together a couple of really cool t-shirts on there. They're up now at thewesternhuntsman.com, and you could check it out. And guys, it supports the show. It helps me pay for all this equipment to get these shows out there. And to top it off, we're going to help fight against the anti-hunting movement. And there's a lot of new information and big announcements coming up regarding that from the Western Huntsman. So check it out at thewesternhuntsman.com and get you a t-shirt or get you some Tacticam gear. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the show. Here we go. Does somebody in the party carry the antidote for the black mamba?
I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, I don't think ours did. We were 4 hours from the nearest village, 16 hours from a city. We had taken a 2-hour flight to get back into where we were at, or we could have drove with a 16 hours, but that adds 4 more days to your trip, so we chartered a plane, but yeah, we were way out in the middle of nowhere.
In the States, you can buy like the rattlesnake kit or whatever with that medicine in it. Because I haven't, where I hunt now in North Idaho, we don't have a rattlesnake problem. We don't, so I forgot what it's all called. But is antidote something that private citizens could just buy and take with them? You think?
You
Or
know, they probably could. If you had the funds, you probably could.
Huh. I'm just
You know,
curious. No big
I'm
deal.
the
I'm
wrong
just
one
curious.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it would have to be refrigerated,
Yeah,
which there was
that
no
part too.
refrigeration where we were at. So,
I feel like I just want to like buy some and send him down to like Raphael, so he's always got it on him. You know what I mean?
I know. Well, and like I said, if you read the book, you'll know that, like I said, I was obsessed with these things. So I was asking everybody that could speak English, do you know anybody that died of a black mamba bite? Do you know anybody that died of? And after like 4 or 5 times of hearing, oh no, no one personally, I was starting to get like, okay, so maybe this isn't so bad. And then I asked Joel, who was kind of like the camp host, I guess you would say,
Mm-hmm.
and he was what I call he was the secret sauce of camp. He was just amazing. But when I asked him, he told me, well, yes, my brother died of it, was killed by a black mamba when he was 10 years old. And because he died, I'm now the oldest of my 35 brothers and sisters.
Holy cow.
In one sentence, not only did I learn that his brother died of a black mamba bite at 10 years old when he was herding goats, I learned that he was the oldest of 35 brothers and sisters. So that was quite a statement.
How does anybody have like from the same mom?
Well, you got to remember his father had 5 wives.
Oh,
so,
gotcha.
It's such a different. Our camp where we were at was represented by 6 different tribes. There were 6 different tribes there, and different customs and different things. Now, Joel had only 1 wife. He said, "I educated. I only have 1 wife." But his brothers, a lot of them still had multiple wives. I mean, it's a cattle society there, and that's how your wealth is measured, by how many cattle you have, like in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you pay for your wives, or the more cattle you have and the more kids you have, the wealthier you're considered.
How long were you guys in Africa for?
Just about 3.5 weeks.
Okay. 3.5 weeks.
So not like years or anything, but then I've done a lot of research too, since I learned a lot of stuff there. And then I heard so many stories. And then of course, when I wrote the book, I had to back up what I felt. I came to understand how important hunting was to Africa and how it saved wildlife, but I knew I had to back that up with knowledge, and like you were talking about that before, person quoting to you on Facebook about those sources. Well, when I backed up my stuff in the book, I used non-hunting sources. I didn't want to. Mm-hmm. I wanted the book to be non-biased, so I used non-hunters and biologists and conservation organizations. I didn't use like
Go hunt
hunting
Africa.
sources wherever possible. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And that is the point of what I was trying to make. She was advocating for wolves using sites like SaveTheWolf.org kind of thing, and it hasn't been to Idaho apparently because the wolves here don't need saving. But what surprised you the most about Africa when you got there? And you talk in great detail about these flies and the heat and these different things. And I want to tell you, I've been to Africa on a totally different experience. So I was in the Marines, and we were chasing terrorists in the Horn of Africa in a little country called Djibouti, to include crossing over into Somalia very, very quickly. I'm not saying that I've hunted Africa, and I'm not saying it because patrolling through some areas in the Horn of Africa, these baboons are nuts, and they scare the shit out of grown Marines at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not saying a baboon got shot, and I'm not saying it, but I am saying that you could say I've been hunting in Africa if you read the cards right. So I've been there, and I was quite surprised for a lot of different reasons, but the part of Africa I was in is totally different than the part of Africa you were in. So what surprised you the most about going to Africa?
Well, I think more than anything, just how do I remember? I think it kind of goes back to, we think of it all as these national parks. We see the Serengeti and we see all these places and all these tourists streaming by and the animals just standing there and it's just like this big drive-through zoo. But Africa isn't. It's wild. I mean, there are parks, of course, but hunting concessions I'm not good with statistics when they're not in front of me, but they preserve so much more land than the national parks, like twice as much or something. So, and what I learned more than anything was not every place is, I used to think, well, why can't we preserve lions and elephants by photo tourism? But once you're over there, you realize photo tourists, most general tourists do not want to be in the places we were at. They don't want to deal with tsetse flies. They don't want potholed roads that throw you, elephant potholed roads that throw you all over the place. They don't want to sleep in a tent with lions roaring outside at night or get a shower that came out of a hole, the water came out of the hole in the ground 3 foot, a 3 foot muddy or sandy muddy hole in the ground. So it's just a whole different, you just start, when you're there, you just start realizing how hunting is so important, more than anything, to preserve habitat. I mean, that's the number one thing, even though sometimes that's left out of the equation. It's definitely left out of the equation when you talk to antis, but
for sure.
It's just, yes, but loss of habitat is the number one threat to all wildlife throughout the world. So anything you can do to preserve habitat in its natural state is good. And that's what hunting does. Hunting makes that land valuable in its natural state without turning it into crops, without turning it into pastures, without turning it into other human sources, without mining it, without whatever these other human uses are. Especially it's lackluster land. It's not beautiful as far as it's beautiful in its own rugged way.
Sure.
But it's not beautiful in the way a tourist might want to look at it. And it's not Victoria Falls, and it's not those kind of places. So more than anything, hunting protects that and gives villagers a reason not to, kill the animals and to preserve the habitat.
And kind of reduce the motivation to poach and things like that. I really liked how you talked about the economic factors that lead to poaching and how improving the economic factors over there would reduce poaching. And I had no idea that it was like this crime syndicate thing over there. And we don't need to go into detail with that, but would it be fair to say that when you're talking about how hunting preserves the habitat and saves the wildlife in those ways, the things that you and I know about, right? Is it a fair assessment to say that the difference is when a tourist goes over there to take photographs, like you said, they don't go to the same places. They're going to, those natural parks where they're a little bit more developed or accessible, so to speak.
And there's big amounts of wildlife there. You got to realize where we went, there was plenty of wildlife, but not near what you see in those national parks.
Not as condensed.
So a photo tourist might be disappointed with what we had, where we were at.
The same comparison could be made. Like, you have a much better chance of seeing a grizzly bear in Yellowstone National Park than you do, 10 feet outside of the park. And so it's the same kind of thing. Animals know where they're safest. I guess what I was getting at is like the photography aspect or just seeing the wildlife, the tourism side. The comparison in funding that generates in comparison to the funding that hunting generates, because let's face it, how do we save habitat? How do we save wildlife? All of it all comes down and boils down to money. It costs money to do this. Can you talk?
It's
can you
staggering.
Speak to that?
It's staggering, really. There's studies that have done, and it goes like you need so many more photo tourists to bring the same thing to the table that hunters bring. It's different everywhere you go, but there's studies from 16 to 1 to 30 to 1, and there was one place that was actually 1,600 tourists to 1. Because tourists, hunters are happy to they sleep. Well, a hunter, they'd sleep on the ground in the middle of Timbuktu on bed of nails if they had to.
Yep.
And they're staying in one place typically. They go there, they're there that whole time. tourists, they want to see everything. So, and don't get me wrong, they need photo tourism. I don't need to be slighting photo tourism at all.
Oh yeah,
They need
nobody
kinds.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, but they go differently. So they'll go to a national park, spend 2 or 3 days. So you got hotel rooms and you got swimming pools and they have to go out to eat and you have all this infrastructure, and they go on a tour in the morning and then a tour in the afternoon, and they hang out at the pool in the afternoon typically. And then after 2 days there, they move on to a different national park because they want to see a different bunch of wildlife or a different scenery. So then they have hotels there and they have laundry and all that. And then they move on to somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? It's just, the what's that word I'm looking for? But the impact on the environment is way more for those kind of tourists than it is for a hunter. And you just need way more of them to make the same kind of money.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's just no comparison, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think that's lost on a lot of people, especially the anti-hunting crowd. They get lost in the emotions and that one specific animal of that one specific species that was killed by a hunter, and they get caught up in a way that they're almost humanizing this animal as if I don't know. I won't go that direction, but they do get lost and caught up in that, where they don't look at the realities of what the funding brings. And it's the same thing here in the States. A bird watcher that is anti-hunting does not generate the same amount of revenue that goes towards conservation and wildlife management that buying a deer tag does. It's not even a situation where you can compare them to say that it's, that's apples to oranges. No, it's more like apples to Antarctica icebergs. Does that make sense? I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, it's just, I mean, let's talk about lions and leopards for a minute.
Okay.
That is one of the hot button issues, and to be honest, it was one for me. I was didn't understand why we really needed to hunt leopards and lions. They're just such an iconic animal, and, there's, isn't there better ways to protect them? But when we came across some elephant bones when we were on safari and Lillian, it opened up a dialogue. There are so many different kinds of poaching that I had never considered, honey poaching, wood poaching, bushmeat poaching. I mean, there's just so many more kinds of poaching than there is just rhino and elephant tusks. But anyway, and what she also said to me, during this learning experience, was that the reason that lion and leopard hunting is so important is it gives a financial reason for people to let them live, essentially. Because if you have kids and you're raising cattle, do you really want lions in your backyard? They're dangerous. 3 months ago, 3 kids were killed. They were out after cattle. 3 boys, young boys, under the age of 12, were killed and eaten by lions as another brother watched from a tree above. Now, Can you imagine that? I mean, I get chills and teary-eyed every time I think of that.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show you what they are dealing with there. So we have to, they poison lions, and we might want to call them evil, and you see these poisoned lions and these speared babies. I have pictures in the book of some of that that was shared with me by a biologist who works in that area. And you want to, some people might try to say these people are evil, but hey, they're living with those animals. Their kids are there, their livelihoods are there. But if you put a financial value on those animals, gives them incentive to try to find ways to mitigate the danger. Maybe they'll put their cattle in bomas at night, or pens. Maybe they'll just take strategic ways to try to lessen the danger. So, what I've learned since doing the research is that a lot of hunting sessions have gotten abandoned since the whole Cecil thing, because it's just so harder to make a living.
Yeah.
But that's where the poaching's happening. Hunters in the field deter poachers because they don't want to be where hunters are. And they strategically place these concessions around the national parks for that reason, because it's like a buffer zone for them. So anyway, where hunting is eliminated, it is actually devastating to the wildlife. So and to people.
Oh, for
and
sure.
that is what those of us sitting here in our cushy chairs have to understand. Whatever policies they come up with for Africa, if the people aren't on board, the local people aren't on board, it's not going to work. I mean, they have to benefit from the conservation of wildlife. Or, if there's no reason to have a kudu on their property, then they're going to raise cattle. They're going to make something that's going to make them money, or they're going to kill it and eat it. There just has to be, it's no different here. If you have a ranch in Idaho and you have 1,000 acres, it has to make you some money, right? You have to be able to live. So you're going to raise a few cattle, or you're going to put some crops in. Well, all of a sudden, if somebody says, well, hey, let's just leave it natural, and you can sell a couple of the deer off of there, and now we have all this habitat, and you can make your money by just selling what's naturally on the land. Well, it's so much common sense. Once you don't even need facts and figures anymore. Once you really think about it, it just makes common sense.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. And it's the value that it creates to the land itself. And this is a concept that we had talked before we started recording about the conversation I had with Dr. Valerius Geist, where he talks about, our public lands that we value here in North America, our Forest Service, our BLM, all of our public lands that we all enjoy. And what happens if the wildlife is destroyed and gone? These lands no longer really have value. What is the value of a forest that doesn't have wildlife? Sure, it's still pretty. Sure, it's still got a creek flowing through it, and it's pretty to look at. But there is no value, and that's and that all kind of derived about over that wolf conversation. Without wolf management, that's basically what happens, and he's proven it through a lot of the studies and research that he's done. And it's the same thing, and I like that concept that you talk about and how you put that, because it simplifies it in a way that I think people can understand that don't get as maybe obsessed about this kind of stuff as you and I do. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just my struggle is always getting to the people that they're not absorbed with this stuff, and they're going on with their daily lives, and they're not really hunters. They're not really anti-hunters. They're just going on with life. And so, but that's the danger, is the messages and the messaging from these propaganda machines like the HSUS and things, Center for Biological Diversity, that like to demonize hunting a lion in Africa, or a caped buffalo or whatever. Which I want to ask you, what was your favorite tasting game meat over there?
It's funny you asked that, because it was zebra, the very animal that I was just so like. And I had really no intention of eating it, to be honest. I finally recognized, it was okay. I mean, well, not that I want to say Rick can do whatever he wants, but I was finally understood the value of hunting it. But I still was not really planning on eating it. But, you come home after being out 12 hours, beating around in that sun and tsetse flies, and you're hungry, and you're sitting by the fire, and you're waiting for dinner, and you have, a mixed drink. And all of a sudden, a skewer of meat that's been roasted over fire comes out to you, and you eat it, and then you find out it's zebra. And so, zebra was my favorite meat. I loved it. It was just so delicious, and I hear that from a lot of people, actually.
I'm super interested, and so I knew what your answer was, because I read that part in the book. I just wanted the audience to hear, but I'm super interested to try it now. That's not something I have ever thought to myself that, gee, I'd love to try a zebra. But now I'm interested. What do you want to convey? Like I don't know if overarching message or just the theme of what you wrote about in your book. What would you say is like the main concept of message that you want people to get out of it?
Well, first and foremost, I want people to have a good time. I want it to be an adventure, and I want them to feel like they were in Africa. I want them to get to know the people like I did, get to fall in love with them, fall in love with the place and the animals. So I want them to feel like they're there with me.
Okay, can I stop you right there?
Sure.
I want hold that thought, because I think that what you just described and how the book, when you read it, the reader perceives it, you achieved that. You're an amazing writer.
Thank you.
You tell the story. It's one of those books that's really difficult to put down. In fact, I got in trouble because I was supposed to, take care of some honeydew list items, and I got kind of hung up reading the book, and it's because the way you put the reader in Africa with you. Like, I was miserable over these dang tsetse flies, or however you pronounce that, and I've never even seen one in person. And so I think you do a really good job with that, and if that was your goal, you definitely achieved it. And so good job, because a lot of writers can't do that. A lot of writers struggle with that part. And so I just wanted to, make you aware that if that was your goal, definitely you did a great job with that. And like, I feel like I'm friends with Lillian and Raphael and Gogo, all these folks in the book, like I personally know them. And so kudos to you for that. Take it away from where I cut you off so rudely.
No, that's okay. Well, that makes me so happy, because I fell in love with those people, and I want everybody else to too, because I feel like you're not going to care about Africa until you care about the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you can relate to them and relate to their life and how hunting helps them and how hunting saves the animals, I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to get on board with why it's important to hunt some of these animals unless you see the big picture and unless you're emotionally involved with the people as well. So that was my goal. But I do want, I figured I want people to learn, but in a fun way. I don't want to be preaching, I'm not like bam, 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 this fact. I just want to weave it in as I learned it. And I want people to just gain this insight and to kind of, I leave it open to them, but I want them to come to I would like them to come to the same conclusion that I have, which is that the sustainable use of wildlife is critical for Africa and its people. So that's the overall, and I want them to be able to make their own decisions. I mean, you have all these people, preaching all these things. I can tell
you're passionate. I love it.
Yes, and it's infuriating when they're saying all this stuff when they don't know how it affects the local people. And it's just really hard to see that. You haven't got to this part of the book yet, but in my last chapter, I mentioned a slide I saw at one of the seminars I went to, and it was a bunch of elders sitting around a fire. And then it was a picture. And then the caption read, "The elders of Africa deciding whitetail deer hunting management in America." So that to me is powerful. I mean, that's what we're doing, or that's what people are trying to do. Africa has been doing a good job of managing their wildlife. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't hiccups. There are always things that can be improved. There's better ways to do things. We don't want to even get into all that, but there are definitely things that can be improved. So I'm not saying it's this everything, but it's the best system out there right now. So anyway, I just feel like we got to support Africa and what works for them and what works for their people. We can't be sitting on our high horses and trying to tell them how to run their countries.
That is such an important concept that I feel like that is one of my to use one of the buzzwords that irritates me is a triggering concept for me. The meddling in the business where you don't have the full picture painted in your own mind is such it just chaps my ass. I don't know how else to put it. These folks in Africa, this wildlife it has thrived for years without people in San Francisco, California chiming in. and I'm just picking on San Francisco. It doesn't matter where they're at, right? It is a concept that it affects us here, like the folks that want to get involved in eliminating bear hunts that are critical to bear management in states like California and Washington. These are folks that have never seen a bear in the wild. These are folks that aren't affected by bears in the wild, and it's the same exact thing when you're and it really makes me, it's really frustrating to me to think that the folks in Africa end up suffering because of those efforts. And I don't know how we get that message out to people to get it in their mind that if because we're here and we're loud and we have opinions does not make us right or give us the right to lecture people in Africa who have been there their whole life how to manage their wildlife. Does that make sense how I said that?
Yeah. And, and that's one thing I do want to mention about the book. Even though it's technically about Africa, it really applies to hunting everywhere. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that people will, like, especially if I can get non-hunters to read it, I'm hoping they'll go on this adventure, and through the adventure, they will come to understand African wildlife conservation, but also understand the heart of a hunter, because it applies to everything going on here in America too. They're picking, trying to shut this down, shutting that down. They're trying to, divide and conquer, and mm-hmm. trying to shut down things here. And I think a lot of hunters feel like, Africa, it doesn't really apply to me. But, after they're done with Africa, well, they're already coming after hunters here, but they're just going to keep on coming. So I just feel like we have to care about Africa too. But I do want people to know, if they read this book, they're also going to understand hunting in America too. And they're going to, like, for instance, I went to a book club the other day for 8 Seattle women, and one I knew, and she had chose it for the book club. All of them were totally amazed with what they learned. They were blown away with they loved the book. They said they look at hunting totally different now, and and they're realtors, so they even look mounts on the walls differently. They said, I now see a mount on the wall as honoring the animal and as a memory. I don't look at it the way I used to wrinkle my nose when I walked into a house. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, because I don't know if you got to that funny story yet, but that's anyway, the whole fire in my house. And then, anyway, but that's how I'm able to bring in the talking about the mounts. But, but anyway, so that was really encouraging. But the problem was, when I asked them, would you have picked this book up if it hadn't been recommended to you, by my friend? And they said, well, no, we probably wouldn't have, because it mentioned hunting. So we wouldn't have picked it up. So that's the problem. That's why I'm kind of reaching out to hunters. I mean, a lot of this stuff is preaching to the choir for you guys, but I'm just hoping it can find its way to non-hunters, the non-hunters. And I'm not saying I'm I know everything, or that this is the only way. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, exactly. And I would challenge what you said with preaching to the choir. What we lack with hunters in general. Not that I'm hunters. Listen, I'm not using like some broad stroke brush here, but it is very difficult to articulate our side and our argument in a way that can emotionally attach itself to people that don't hunt. And I to expand on that, what I mean is, we know that the anti-hunting movement and folks that don't really understand the value in conservation that comes out of hunting, they're very, very good at articulating these very emotional arguments that can be articulated in a few sentences, or very emotionally and very impactful to the individual. Hunters don't have that luxury. To counter those kind of arguments, it's a long, drawn-out discussion. It's facts and statistics and data and history and all these things that make people's eyes glaze over. And so when you say you were preaching to the choir with your book, I don't think you were, because what you do, a lot of authors, a lot of writers try or attempt this, where they're trying not to bore people with the educational side of the book that they're trying to convey, but they end up boring them. Not the case in this book. You have a way of meshing the story in with the details that speak to, I hate to sound cheesy, but speak to the heart instead of just the pragmatic mind, right? And so that's important, and I think that hunters will learn a lot as to how to do that and how to speak that message to non-hunters. I'm not talking about the anti-hunters. The anti-hunters are not going to listen to what we have to say in most cases. I'm talking about the
we
non-hunters.
need to reach that middle ground.
The middle ground,
middle ground.
Exactly, and you're exactly right, and that is the challenge. And so hunters would surely benefit from this, because not only are you going to learn about how hunting is done in Africa and kind of walk along with Sue and Rick through their adventure in Africa for 3.5 weeks of like, this was seriously difficult hunting. It blows my mind. I'd rather go 10 miles back in the backcountry of Idaho than cruise around like you guys did in that kind of way. It's just really hard stuff. But it also, you get so much out of it in terms of the way you can articulate that emotional side of hunting that might actually attach itself to somebody who is not a hunter. And that's very, very difficult. And so preaching to the choir in terms of, yes, we agree with what your message is, but it's not preaching to the choir in terms of how to articulate that message, and that's what you do well. And so that's why I think all hunters should read this book. And so it's an important message, and we all have to be better at articulating this message. Otherwise, we're not going to have a dog in this fight for very long, because the folks that are against it have mastered that emotional argument. And so, yeah, I think that it's definitely.
And I think that is what I try to do, is the emotional part, because I'm not a fact and statistic person. I mean, I recognize that they're important, they tell the story, but they don't touch the heart in the same way.
Yeah.
So that's why through this book, I try to, I talk about my emotions and what I go through, and the common sense side of things, and the emotions of the people. And I fight emotion with emotion in a way, because
exactly.
I don't really rely on statistics that much. I mean, I think I talk about them a little bit, but not too much in general.
Exactly. And it's very much, I'm learning a lot as to how to do that, because like I told you, I'm working on a book that is along these lines, and I have a hard time not going right to the data. Like, here's how many white-tailed deer there were in this year versus how many white-tailed deer, and this is why the white-tailed deer are where they're at. It's very difficult for me to not go to that statistical data. But nobody wants to sit and read that. Like, you might as well sit down and read an algebra book, right? It's really hard to articulate that into where you have to have some of those facts, but you have to have the emotion. You cannot fight emotion with facts. That is my analysis after fighting these anti-hunters for the last decade, is I don't believe you could fight emotion with facts. And you can't just say, oh, you got to have science over emotion. Okay, what does that mean to a non-hunter? What do they care? Because it's not going to work. So anyway,
No, I agree. I think you have to fight emotion with emotion. You have to get them emotionally involved with the reality of things, if that makes any sense.
Couldn't agree more.
But and I think that's what's so, I guess, unique about my book. In doing my research, I read a lot of books, but I couldn't find any book from my perspective, like any written by a non-hunter talking about this stuff. There's plenty of hunting books, and there's plenty, and there's even plenty of books about conservation through hunting. But they're not saying they're not good, but they're dry reading, like the normal. Only
hunters would want to read them.
Yeah, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them were like real. Yeah, but they weren't even. Yeah, maybe it was just they were real technical. Yep. And it's just not easy reading. It's not like sitting down in the evening, I'm going to read a book type of thing. Now, they were great for me for research, but that's why I tried to kind of weave in everything in throughout the stories and make it fun, because I feel like if it isn't fun, people aren't going to read it. So I had to make it, take them on this grand adventure with me and hope that they're going to learn while they're there, basically.
Yeah, and I feel like you did that. So
thank you.
I think that one of the things, just to back up what I'm talking about there in terms of how important I think that it is that people read this book, I do want to do a giveaway for the book. And basically, I believe the book is just available at Amazon. Is that correct?
Yeah, right now I might go wide later, but right now I'm just kind of overwhelmed with this whole the promotional part of it. I got the book in print, and right now I'm just dealing with Amazon. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so you can get it on, which, guys, the link to get the book, I really do encourage you guys to get the book, read through it. It's one of the things I really liked about having this book is it's a great book to have on the shelf that the entire family could read and enjoy. And then it creates, like, my daughter and I have had some great conversations over this book. So it's one of those things that's going to drive that. But I do want to do a giveaway, and what that is what I want you guys to jump on Instagram, and let me just pull this back up here. Hey, by the way, Sue, that sporting goods store in Grangeville, it is called Ray Brothers Sporting Goods.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that. Oh, I feel terrible. I forgot
found
that.
it. Yep, I didn't want to leave that one hanging. So, Ray Brothers Sporting Goods in Grangeville. Appreciate you guys. So your Instagram is SueTidwell.writer. Am I saying your last name right?
Yep, Sue Tidwell. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, SueTidwell.writer on Instagram, and on Facebook I'm Sue Tidwell. I have like there too if you want to follow there. The same posts kind of go over there, but
that's such a disturbing picture you have of that hippo picking up that baby hippo. Man, I just want to rescue that little hippo.
I know, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah. So
that's why I talk so much about animals in there, because I think that's one reason some people really like it is because I talk a lot about the animals. But for you to understand African why it's so important, you kind of have to understand the nature of animals. So
yeah.
But anyway,
great point, and that's applicable everywhere on every continent. So yeah, for sure, love that. Okay, so here's what to do, guys. If you want to try to, we're gonna run this for like a week. Do a giveaway. Jump on Instagram. You got to go to SueTidwell.writer, and that'll be in the show notes, by the way. And you have to follow her page, her Instagram. And when I post, I mean, if you're listening, you better be following the Western Huntsman on Instagram, right? I mean, when I post, I'm gonna be releasing this episode this week. So when I post the promotional episode thing that I always do, I always send a picture out there. I want you guys to snapshot that and share it to your page. Okay, so you have to be doing two things. You have to be following at SueTidwell.writer, and you have to share the post that I make, which is going to be probably a picture of Sue or the book or something like that. I'm not sure yet. We'll figure that out after we get off the recording here, Sue.
Okay.
And what you do, how you do that, if for those of you who are like me and don't know much about Instagram, what you have to do is you have to screenshot the post and then share it to your Instagram page, and tag us in it. Tag us in it and refer the book to other people. So that's and the point of this, guys, is to get this message out so that maybe you have followers that are non-hunters that might pick up this book and learn something. And so that's kind of the point. We're trying to spread information and create education where it's going to be impactful for us as hunters and outdoorsmen to keep this effort of conservation alive and well. So once again, follow at SueTidwell.writer and share our episode post to your Instagram. And go ahead and tag us in it, and then I'm going to pick a winner. I have this program that randomizes everybody, and I'll pick a winner and send you the book. And if you're not the winner, just jump on Amazon.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for writing the book. It's going to be super helpful.
Sure.
So, any closing thoughts that you want people to know about the book before we wrap this up, or? Well,
I'll just kind of end with just people a lot of times ask why it's called Cries of the Savanna. Well, first of all, I fell in love with the Cries of the Savanna. I mean, laying in the tent at night, you could hear the lions and the hyenas and the hippos, and sometimes the elephants were going through, and every night was just like a new adventure in its own. I mean, it was scary, but you woke up in the morning and that was the talk of the morning. Did you hear the lions go through last night at 2, or did you hear the elephants at 3 in the morning? And so I just fell in love with the cries of the Savanna. So that is where the name came from. And then, but I'm going to just kind of read this. But the second part was, I am not the same having heard the cries of the Savanna, not only their savage songs, but the cries for the world to awaken, to understand the hard truth needed to ensure the cries forever remain a part of wild Africa and not just ghostly echoes from a distant past. So
love it.
My it has double meaning, basically. I'm the cries of the Savanna, literally, and then the cries of the Savanna for people to understand. So that's the meaning behind the title. And I just appreciate any help I can get. Like I said, I did this on my own. I paid for myself. So I just need all the help I can get to get it out into the world, to get it to non-hunters, sharing it, talking about it. Anything you can do to help in that aspect is just really, really appreciated.
Yeah, and it's important too. I think it's just there's a lot of books out there, and I do not often get authors on the show, simply because I don't want to inundate. I could do an entire podcast just bringing authors on the show, but the thing is when the message is important and the message is beneficial to hunting and conservation, that's what this book is, and it's important that we talk about it. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. I really love the book, and I haven't even finished it yet. I can't wait to I'll have it done by probably 48 hours from here. I'll have it knocked out. But great job writing it, folks. Jump on there and grab that book. You won't regret it, I promise. And look out for that that contest we're going to run if you want to try to win a free book that I will just jump on Amazon and send your way. Sue Tidwell. Cries of the Savanna.
Thank you very much, Jim, for having me on. I really appreciate it, and thanks to all your listeners.
Thank you very much, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Sounds good.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.